Hi. If this is the first time you've listened to the Reider Report podcast, welcome. If you're a returning listener, I'm glad you're back. But for all of you, if you've ever gotten into a tough situation as a pilot and learned some valuable lessons, I'd like to hear your story and consider having you as a guest on the podcast. Shoot me an email, rob@avbrief.com. rob@avbrief.com. Now, on with the podcast. Statistics. They can give us benchmarks for so many things. In aviation, many of us pilots are aware of the statistics of incidents, accidents, crashes, survivability, and sadly, fatalities. And for pilots who have lower time, between 50 and 350 hours in their logbooks, the stats tell a chilling story about the rate of accidents. It's got a name, the killing zone. And it's our topic on this episode of the Reider Report. Hello, everyone. I'm Rob Reider, and welcome to episode 9 of AvBrief's Reider Report podcast, brought to you by Avemco Insurance. Dr. Paul Craig is my guest today. He's a flight instructor, a college professor, a statistician, and author of a book in which he studied thousands of accident reports. The Killing Zone, now in its 3rd edition, describes his findings about the accident rate among lower-time pilots. And he has his own story from when he was an instrument-rated newbie. We'll meet Paul right after this message from Avemco. When you call Avemco Insurance Company, you get real answers from real people. Proudly based in the USA since 1961, Avemco provides lightning-fast quotes, competitive rates, and personalized policies that are easy to read and tailored to you. Start your aircraft insurance quote today at www.avemco.com/riderreport. or by calling one of the Avemco Aviation underwriters at 800-353-9089. Don't forget to tell them the Reider Report sent you for 5% off your premium. Premium credits are subject to underwriting guidelines, including Avemco-recognized training and memberships. Now, the Reider Report. My guest on today's program is Dr. Paul Craig. Not a medical doctor, but a PhD, who is a pilot, flight instructor, author, and serves on the faculty at Middle Tennessee State University. You have got quite a curriculum vitae, sir. Paul Craig, welcome to the Reider Report.
Well, Rob, I can't thank you enough. This is going to be a lot of fun.
It will be fun, and it relates in a personal way to the theme of your widely read book, now in its 3rd edition, The Killing Zone. Before we tell about your whole journey, tell us about The Killing Zone, because I heard you on Pilot's Discretion with John Zimmerman from Sporty's talking about this. The Killing Zone is what?
Well, this is the 3rd edition, as you mentioned, and I started the analysis of general aviation aircraft accidents and trends way back in 1983, because that's the first year I became a flight instructor. That's why I started at that point. And when the initial research turned up that pilots that have lower time had a higher rate, not just a count number, but a rate number of accidents, and originally called the danger zone, but it got turned into the killing zone. And that zone, that range, is from about 50 to 350 flight hours. And over the years, the total number of accidents have declined from all the work you've done and what I've tried to do, and all of our colleagues who are in aviation and aviation safety have done a terrific job at reducing the total number. So when I went into this 3rd edition possibility, I didn't know for sure if there was a killing zone. Maybe we'd solved this problem. And as I said, the numbers are down, but But sadly, the rate increases during that little zone. And it's not rocket science. It's because people are inexperienced during that time and they're learning from their mistakes. But unfortunately, sometimes aviation mistakes can cause an accident.
What years did the first and second and third editions cover?
Sure. The first one was 1983 to 1999. And then the second edition picked up there in 2000, went to 2012. I wasn't exactly sure there was going to be a third edition, but we looked at the numbers. I looked at the numbers and saw that from 2013 through 2023, that zone, that's the last group. So every book is a standalone. I mean, all the accident scenarios and lessons learned from those accidents that's in the third edition, all those accidents have happened since the second edition was published. So it's practically a new book. And so many things have happened in the last 10 years that we needed to cover.
And in those 10 years, how many investigation reports did you compile to get those numbers?
Well, I used the National Transportation Safety Board's database, and I filtered to general aviation only. I didn't count airlines, didn't count air taxi. And I filtered for airplanes. I didn't count helicopters. I didn't, any of the other kinds of aircraft. I just general aviation airplanes, whether they be built in a factory or home built, didn't matter. And between those years, there was 12,406 accidents. And that's a lot of accidents. Here's some good news. Only 17% of those resulted in a fatal accident.
Wow.
Which means over 80% were survivable, and about 70% were accidents where the pilot and passengers had no injury at all or minor injury. I say that, it sounds like good news, doesn't mean we can let our guard down. Even 1%, even one accident's too many. So that's why we keep striving to bust the zone here. But that was pretty good news. And by the way, there's a lot of ways the NTSB can filter the data, but it does not automatically include the time flight time the pilot had on the day of their accident. The only way to do that is to go into all those accident reports and find it. So that's what I did. And I found out what flight time the pilot had on the day of their accident and dropped them into buckets. That's how I know how many accidents took place between pilots between 0 and 50 hours and 50 and 100 hours and so forth. And then I was able to calculate for each of those buckets based on the rate of exposure to risk. And I used the same calculation that the Bureau of Transportation Statistics and AOPA and FAA use, which is flight hours, accidents per 100,000 flight hours. And nobody believes that 100,000 flight hour number is exactly right. I mean, nobody knows for sure how many hours general aviation airplanes flew last year. But there is a calculation that they make, and they use the same formula every year so they can use it as a baseline. So it's and I won't ever say it's the perfect calculation, but the numbers do tell a story.
They do indeed tell a story. And speaking of stories, I'd like to hear yours because it's interesting for me that you went from being a flight instructor to helping establish the aviation department at Middle Tennessee State University. Tell me about your aviation journey.
I started my aviation career in high school. There was an English teacher at my high school who was a private pilot. And I don't know, I guess he convinced the principal to have this one session in the afternoon of aerospace, is what he called it. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what that was. I guess I needed a science credit, and it sounded better than chemistry or physics, so I take it, not having an idea what it was. And it was in that class that I was really exposed to aviation, took discovery flights for the first time. The curriculum was taught by that English teacher who was a private pilot, and I'll never forget it. He used phonograph records and slide projector film strips for our instruction that he bought from Sporty's Pilot Shop. This is 50 years ago.
Holy cow. Well, it's over. Sporty's has been around for over 60 years, going to 65 now.
We must have been one of the first buy-ins. And the phonograph record would go beep, and that's how you knew to advance this film strip to the next slide.
Oh, gosh.
And that's where my aviation career began. I did then continue on, went to college in aviation, got my flight ratings, became a flight instructor, at that point, I kind of realized that my calling was to teach aviation. So I didn't go to the airlines. I didn't go to the military. I started off teaching as an adjunct for practically no money. I spent 9 years teaching at a community college in North Carolina, and then came to MTSU. After that, I started off as their chief flight instructor, joined the faculty later, did spend some time as the department chair, and now I'm the director of the master's degree program. We have an online aerospace master's degree that I'm working in and direct now.
Okay, Paul, let's go to your Killing Zone Reider Report episode now, because it involves something that I have experienced and many others have too, and that involves instrument meteorological conditions. Tell me when it happened, how many hours you had, were you in the killing zone, and what happened on your story?
Well, I hadn't coined the word killing zone yet, but I was definitely in that zone at the time. I had gotten my instrument rating like everybody else I knew. We flew mostly under the hood. I had very little time actually in the clouds after I became instrument rating. So I was flying from Raleigh, North Carolina to Knoxville and over the Smoky Mountains. And I had my mother with me. And that was the first time that I was legal to go in the clouds, but that's the first time I really experienced hard, real IFR. And we're talking turbulence, heavy rain, which is really loud,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm flying down at the MEA, gasping for air.
What kind of an airplane were you flying?
It was a Piper 180, bare bones.
But a good platform.
Yeah. Oh, safe. Good thing it was a safe airplane. Had I had any problems that day, I probably would have been overwhelmed. I mentioned my mom. She's an equestrian. She's been on horseback most of her whole life, and she still teaches kids to ride. And she told me later that she just cinched her seatbelt on, acted like it was a bucking bronco. I don't think she grabbed the seatbelt and put one hand in the air like a bull rider, but she hung right with me. Anyway, before we get to Knoxville, the clouds started to either clear up or maybe I got below it. I can't remember, but I remember I was really shook up. I was disoriented, and I made a VFR landing at Knoxville, and I always got on the ground. I always think that if I had to make an ILS approach or any kind of approach down to minimums in that mindset, I don't really know if I could have done it. And that's what scared me the most, that I wasn't confident that I could handle the situation.
What year was this?
Oh, gosh, it would have been in the early 80s, probably.
And that was a time when flight service stations were still the primary source of in-flight information.
Absolutely. Only sources I remember.
How did you get your briefing, and did you expect to encounter those conditions en route? And then when you got there, how did you find out you were actually in IMC? So let's start with the briefing. What kind of a briefing did you get?
It was on the telephone. It wasn't in person. There was a time when we'd go do briefings in person, but that wasn't happening much then. And it was on the telephone, and it was a good briefing. I had all the information I needed to know. I knew there was going to be clouds. It wasn't like I was surprised by it. But what I was surprised by was just how intense that it was. And I definitely got behind the airplane, as they say. So it wasn't that I was surprised by weather that I didn't expect. The weather briefing was solid. It was just my reaction to it. And, as an instrument instructor later on, I try to take my students into the clouds as much as possible, because I might have had maybe less than 1 hour actual instrument time as I was an instrument rated pilot. Because I had done everything under the hood like most people do. And so I was legal, but wow, I just wasn't really prepared for the level I was getting myself into.
What was that you told me about the halo around the position lights?
Well, on another occasion.
Okay.
On another occasion. Well, it's a good point, because before I was instrument rated, I was flying at night with some friends, and all of a sudden, without warning, I looked to the left and right and saw the red and green position lights casting their light into the clouds, forming a halo around each wingtip. I didn't know I was in the cloud. I didn't know what it was going to look like. And we've all heard maybe of that 178 second rule, that Years ago, there was a study where they took uninstrument rated pilots into the clouds and let them have the controls, and they lost control of the airplane because of spatial disorientation or whatever within an average 178 seconds. So when I saw those halos and it dawned on me that I was in a cloud, I swear to you, I looked over at the second hand on the clock on the airplane, thinking I got 178 seconds. So I made a very shallow 15-degree turn to the left, 180 degrees around. The halos disappeared, and I flew to the nearest airport.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a great thing to be able to do, especially when you can make that turn without being concerned about ground clearance or anything like that. And,
Sure.
and also keeping the shiny side up. That's so.
And I was also turning a shallow. I didn't want to go steep because that could introduce all kind of other problems. Took longer to get out, but I got out.
Well, yes, and the brain will lie to you really quickly.
Yes.
Indeed. All right. So you're in the clouds. You're getting pounded. Did you find yourself so afraid that you were thinking about declaring an emergency on your way into Knoxville?
And, that never really occurred to me. I didn't really know what the emergency would be. I mean, it's normal operations for a seasoned instrument pilot. I just wasn't that. It's a good question. I don't know. When we got the west side of the Smoky Mountains into Knoxville, I was flying in clear air. My attention level went way down because I knew I could just fly. I'll be honest with you. For some reason, I thought I was coming in from a different direction. I was so disoriented from that experience that when we got on the ground, I was continuing on after that on to Nashville. But I think maybe I waited another hour or so just to collect myself before we got back in the air, and it was clear air the rest of the way. If it had been IFR the rest of the way, I don't think I would have gone.
When you were IMC at that point and getting bounced around, and you were at the MEA going over those Smokies, the MEA is sometimes as high as 6,800 or 7,000 feet, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in that range, 7,000 or 8,000 feet at some spots. So that's not terribly high. It's not like I was threatened with hypoxia, but nevertheless, with the there are some turbulence where you just can't hold an altitude, and you just have to sort of ride the waves. When you're already at the MEA, you really shouldn't do that. So it was. I don't know how to express the level of intensity that landed on me. That I just was unprepared.
Well, tell you what, let's take a little break here and come back and let's discuss the lessons that you learned from that, the takeaways. And I also want to talk a little bit more about another of your books called Flight Times. I love this line. Instruction and inspiration from the second best flight instructor. So I got to find out who that is.
I'm not the second best, by the way. Let's just clear that up, too.
Okay, we will find out right after this message. We'll be right back. Avemco Insurance Company has thousands of five-star reviews on Trustpilot.com. Here's one from Henry K., who said, "For more than 18 years, Avemco has insured me and my aircraft. The cost has been very reasonable and service excellent. Completely satisfied. The only claim I ever had was handled quickly and to my complete satisfaction. Avemco is a first-rate insurer." Experience the advantage of going direct with Avemco Insurance Company. Call 800-353-9089 for a free quote, or visit avemco.com/Reider Report today. Don't forget to tell them the Reider Report sent you for 5% off your premium. Premium credits are subject to underwriting guidelines, including Avemco recognized training and memberships. Now, back to the Reider Report. We're back with Dr. Paul Craig, who did fine ultimately in that killing zone IMC flight. But what are some of the takeaways, Paul, that you have from that flight, starting with your flight planning, the briefing, the execution of the flight, and how you responded afterwards?
Well, I think everything about it was pretty normal, right? I mean, clouds over the mountains, is a normal meteorological situation. That's why we get an instrument rating in the first place, so we can fly through them safely. My weather briefing was Correct. Nothing took me off guard. I knew there was going to be clouds.
Were you
And
expecting turbulence as well?
I don't know that I was expecting that much. I don't know if I had gotten some kind of pilot report. I don't think I did. Um, so, so yeah, that was the thing that really was the part that was overwhelming. That my training, and I passed my IFR check ride first try. I thought I was kind of a hot shot, but to realize the gap between what my training had prepared me for and what I was up against was immense. And that was a shocker because I thought I was ready to go. And, I guess I was ready to go, but I was not mentally prepared for that. And so that's probably my biggest takeaway, that I was, turbulence over the mountains, that's not unusual. Having to fly a small single-engine airplane at the MEA over mountains, that's not unusual. Nothing was out of the ordinary. It's just what was in my head was what was unusual.
This was a daytime flight as well, correct?
Thank goodness. Yes, it was.
Yes. Now, how many hours had elapsed, Paul, between your check ride that you passed for your instrument ticket, or instrument rating, I should say, and the flight in question here?
In time, it was probably less than 1 year in calendar time. In flight time, it was probably no more than 10 or 15 hours. I'm not really sure, but probably in that range. So it was probably 10 or 15 hours. I remember the first time I flew IFR solo, there was 4,000 scattered. And so what did I do? I filed 4,000 so I can just pop in and out of the clouds, like, brace myself. Boom, I'm in IMC and then I'm out and then I'm in. And so that wasn't real hard IFR. That was what I had experienced, that I said, well, I can do this now. I'm an instrument rated pilot. Probably wasn't the smartest thing I ever did, but that was the extent of my realism. So when I got face to face with real IFR flying, it's what people do every day, and it shouldn't have shook me up, but it did, because I just between what I had done in the past, which I'd played by all the rules, I've got all the training, and then what I experienced was a pretty big gap.
Did the Cherokee 180 have an autopilot, or were you hand flying the whole time?
No autopilot.
All right. So that adds to the workload as well.
Sure.
Especially if you're getting bounced around and get handed off from one frequency or one controller to another in a segment, and have to change frequencies and keep it level and straight.
Yeah, the workload that I was called upon to do was also normal, but it was a lot for me to handle in this situation.
Not a lot of hours, and almost potentially almost a year. That's not a lot of flying time to stay current,
Yeah.
or even say you're proficient, right?
Yeah. Well, I was definitely current. Now, was I proficient? Well, you heard the story.
You said it took you about an hour to recover. What physiological symptoms did you exhibit? Were your legs shaking? Did you have the sweats? What happened to you?
I was just completely spent. I mean, I was exhausted. And I had just been sitting there. It wasn't like I was running a race. But yes, I was mentally exhausted and physically exhausted. I would guess I was more wrestling with the airplane than I should have been. And so, yeah, I just took time. I was at the pilot's lounge, and I mentioned the rest of the flight was going to be VFR, or I would have not even considered it. But it took me a while just to collect myself.
You said your mother strapped herself in. She's the equestrian that she is. What did she say when it was all over?
Well, she did tell me she thought it was like riding a bucking bronco. My mother's ridden in their small airplanes with me since I was 17, and she's very brave. And she was that day.
But she trusted you. She was not concerned.
She didn't act it. I think she might have been, but she didn't show it.
I am really glad that you were willing to share this story with us, because, as you've said, we're not going to live long enough to learn all the lessons ourselves, so we have to learn from others. True, true, true. Now, tell me about the book Flight Times, Instruction and Inspiration from the Second Best Flight Instructor. I got to know who that is.
Well, okay, the title, that subtitle's a bit of a joke. I became very good friends with Bill Kirshner. And Bill Kirshner was a famous aviation writer, aerobatics teacher, spin teacher. And he and I did many safety seminars together in his later years. And he sent me a copy of one of his books to kind of give him some feedback, which I did. And when that book came out, he sent me an autographed copy. And it said, "To Paul Craig, the second best flight instructor, because nobody was going to be better than Bill Kirshner in that. So it was kind of a joke. And let's just be clear, I'm not the second best flight instructor. I've had so many instructors better than me. I've got students of mine who became flight instructors. I got Fred Nauer is one of my students. He's himself in the Flight Instructor Hall of Fame. So it is, it's just kind of funny. And the whole book, the Flight Times, is more kind of an antidote to the Killing Zone. It's a whole bunch of stories that have happy endings, and hopefully that are entertaining, and fellow pilots of mine will see it. And there was a few brushes with history in there a little bit. So yeah, just Google it, and I think it's a fun read.
But they're not all about you. These are not these 300 some pages here are not all on. No, excuse me, over 500 pages are not all about your experiences.
Well, it's mostly me. I mean, certainly I am. No, none of us in this business are doing this alone. I've had mentors. I just mentioned my students. Yeah, I think most of the stories I've had something to do with.
Well, I'm so pleased that you were able to take some time with us and to share your story. A good outcome, nothing that wasn't expected, but certainly if we're not current and we're not proficient, we can get ourselves in even normal circumstances, get ourselves in a pickle, and we don't want that to happen, do we?
Right.
Paul Craig, thank you so much for being on the Reider Report.
Thank you so much for having me, and we appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll help us grow by telling your friends about the podcast. I've received comments from non-pilots who enjoy the stories as well. It's my goal, though, to help pilots learn from the experience of others. It's hangar flying that you can take with you anywhere at any time. And if you've got a story that you'd like to share, here's my email address, rob@avbrief.com. rob@avbrief.com. The Reider Report theme and commercial instrumental music for the podcast was written and performed by Rob Pottorff. For Avemco Aviation Insurance and avbrief.com, I'm Rob Reider. Catch you next time on The Reider Report.